In the past, I have made some videos about Pokemon who don't appear in the main series games, but are either mentioned in them or appear in some kind of other media, and I've always thought that those videos were a lot of fun, so I'm here to cover the same sort of thing for stuff other than the Pokemon themselves. There is a lot of crazy stuff in Pokemon that the main series games don't actually feature, like, for example, a bunch of different kinds of Pokeballs. For as many Pokeballs as there are in the main series games, there's even more in other parts of the franchise that we haven't got to use in a core series title. For example, there are balls like the Pester Ball, the Unite Ball, and the Typing Ball that feature in various spin-off games like Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Unite, and Learn with Pokemon Typing Adventure. There's also special variants of Pokeballs that have appeared exclusively in the anime, like this unique version of the Safari Ball, or this different rendition of the Sport Ball / Park Ball. There's also a special green Pokeball that appears in the anime in the very first episode, which appears very similar to the anime's version of the Safari Ball that I just mentioned, but it does not have the S on the front like the Safari Ball does. What's also interesting about this ball is that Brendan, in his official Ruby and Sapphire artwork, is carrying a green Pokeball that looks just like this one. And again, this does not appear in the games even though it's in Brendan's official artwork. Another strange Pokeball that actually does appear in Ruby and Sapphire, meanwhile, is in the possession of Glacia, but it's not actually a ball that resembles any of the actual attainable balls in the games. It is colored yellow instead of the typical red, and a yellow Pokeball like this also appears in the possession of Wickstrom in his official art as well. In fact, it is my personal theory that these two are actually connected, since the Hoenn games were obviously remade in Gen 6, and those followed up the release of X and Y, where Wickstrom appears, and both Wickstrom and Glacia are Elite Four members. So it feels like to me that this might be an intentional reference between the two games as a sort of tease in X and Y to the eventual release of Oraz, which followed those games up. There are also a number of other anime-exclusive Pokeballs as well, including the Lake Ball and the Catch Race Pokeball. These balls are used to catch Pokemon in special competitions, similar to what we see in the games themselves with the Sport Ball and the Bug Catching Contest. There's also a couple of unique balls that appear in Pokemon the Movie Forever, namely the Dark Ball, which is used by the Iron Masked Marauder, and a more primitive Pokeball that is used by a young Professor Oak. Similar to this, another older Pokeball model is also seen in the episode Just Waiting on a Friend, and it bears somewhat of a resemblance to Professor Oak's Pokeball from the Pokemon Forever movie, with the button being on top of the ball instead of on the side. A bunch of unique and interesting new Pokeballs have also appeared more recently in the anime too, with Pokemon Horizons, including the Ancient Pokeball, which is central to the plot, and there's also several custom Pokeballs that a Pokeball developer named Karna made, all with varying effects. These include the Rocket Ball, the Boomerang Ball, the Bomb Bomb Ball, the Chase Ball, and a special ball with an unknown effect that was given to Orla. There's also a special Pokeball that appears in the Electric Tail of Pikachu manga, and it's called the Enormo Pokeball X1. This was a giant Pokeball that was developed in order to capture a giant Haunter that was terrorizing Saffron City in the manga. Moving on from Pokeballs, we are now going to take a look at some glorious snacks and treats from today's sponsor, Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. These two are subscription boxes that bring Japanese snacks and treats, which come straight from Japan, and deliver them right to your door. I've been getting them for a while myself, and they always provide some really fun and tasty treats to try. For example, Tokyo Treat specializes in modern treats, and its theme this month is Summer Matsuri Flavor Fest. So you'll find stuff like this delicious cookies and cream waffle and these super good looking golden caramel Kit Kats. And it's all a part of featuring snacks and treats that come from summer Japanese festivals. Meanwhile, Sakura Co. is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box that supplies more traditional Japanese snacks. Its theme this month is Islands of Okinawa and contains an assortment of goodies, which even includes an authentic piece of tableware each month too. And this month I got this cute little fish dish. So if you would like to try out an authentic taste of Japan yourself, you can do so by picking up a box with the links in the description. And when you use code HOOPS at checkout, you'll also get $5 off of your first box. And it directly supports the channel as well when you do. So give that a look, and a big thank you to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. for supporting the channel. Now, the next thing that we're going to take a look at in this department are gym leaders, because there's actually a few gym leaders that we see elsewhere, namely in the anime, that don't appear in the main series games. For example, there's Flint. No, not that one. The original Flint, aka Brock's dad, who was a former gym leader in Pewter City. There's also Brock's mom, Lola, who briefly held the title of Pewter Gym Leader and even attempted changing it into a Water-type gym in Pokemon Chronicles. Then there's Forrest, Brock's younger brother, who is the most recent Pewter Gym Leader in the anime. I honestly really like this idea of gym leaders swapping in and out as a sign of the passage of time, and honestly it would be really cool to see a character like Forrest take up the role of gym leader in Pewter City in the game someday, in possibly a future-based Kanto-related title. A number of other anime-exclusive gym leaders include Misty's sisters, who admittedly aren't very good gym leaders, but are supposed to act as leaders whenever Misty isn't at the Cerulean Gym. And then there's also Agatha, who was actually a temporary leader of the Viridian Gym, which is pretty cool. And there's also Visquez, who is the most recent member of this group, who appeared in Pokemon Journeys and acts as the leader of the Vermilion City Gym in the absence of Lieutenant Surge. Come to think of it, all of these gym leaders that I've been talking about are basically just replacement gym leaders, and on top of that, they all come from Kanto. So it looks like Kanto has really got to get its gym system together, because it's honestly kind of in shambles. It's not just gym leaders, though, who appear outside of the main series. There are also champions who appear outside the main series as well. However, I'm actually going to start with a mysterious champion who is in the main series instead, although they've only ever been mentioned and are never seen. In the infamous Strange Souvenir event in Pokemon X and Y, you encounter a hiker who gives you the Strange Souvenir, and this is all meant to act as a tease towards Pokemon Sun and Moon. However, in retrospect, he mentions something weird when he's talking about what we now know to be Alola. He mentions that his region's champion is really something else. But the thing is, Alola didn't even have a champion at this time because you become the first champion in Sun and Moon. And we also know that Sun and Moon takes place after the events of X and Y, thanks to the appearance of Dexio and Cena in Sun and Moon. And they also mention that the events of X and Y explicitly took place in the past. So there is a definite discrepancy with regards to who this champion is that this hiker is talking about. It's clear that something changed at some point in development between this statement in X and Y and the eventual release of Sun and Moon, which honestly makes sense considering that this statement came about 3 years prior to Sun and Moon's release, which obviously leaves a lot of time for things to change. It's entirely possible that Alola was intended to have a champion at one point, but things were changed for some reason. We might never know for certain, but it is clear that there is some kind of secret champion out there somewhere that we ultimately never got to see, which is really interesting. We're now going to move on, however, to champions that don't appear in the games, and aren't even mentioned in them either, and the first one is Rald. Now, there's a good chance that you've never heard of a character in Pokemon named Rald before, but he might look familiar if I show you a picture of him, as he's actually just another incarnation of Brendan, who appears in the Pokemon Battle Frontier manga, where he takes up the role of a former champion. And speaking of Hoenn, you also might not know that the entire Hoenn Elite Four have also been champions themselves at one point, which is revealed in the Ruby and Sapphire arc of the Pokemon Adventures manga. I feel like this is something that could honestly be the case for a lot of the various Elite Fours, however, it's not something that's ever really talked about explicitly in the games, and in this case was just mentioned for the Hoenn Elite Four in the manga. Professor Oak was also a champion in the Adventures manga as well, which seems to parallel the secret final battle with him in the Gen 1 games that unfortunately never made the final cut. This next champion that I have to discuss, though, is arguably one of the most intriguing, as there is a pretty interesting story surrounding him, and that would be Master Rose. Rose isn't your typical champion, but I'm including him in this video because he's got a pretty interesting story. Rose was intended as the champion character in Pokemon Duel, which was a mobile game that was released in 2016 in Japan and in 2017 in the rest of the world. However, Pokemon Duel was shut down in 2019 before its story could be completed, meaning that Rose was never able to be challenged, and much about what was intended for his character was never revealed, making for one of the more curious and mysterious cases in Pokemon history. Moving along from the likes of gym leaders and champions, though, the next thing I want to cover are the actual gym badges that those gym leaders hand out. We are famously told that there are 8 gym leaders in each region that you need to beat if you want to become that region's champion, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case across all canons, as we have seen a bunch of gym badges that actually don't belong to any of the normal main series gym leaders. I've touched on this in a previous video as well, but as many as 30 or so badges that come from gyms that we have never seen before have been seen at various points in the anime. And the interesting thing is, these unknown badges were consistently seen throughout the anime in the original series, from the Kanto arc all the way through the Kalos arc. It's also more recently been implied in the games, like in Sword and Shield, that there are in fact more than 8 gyms per region, but it seems to be the case that possibly only 8 at a time are used for the Pokemon League Challenge, which is a really interesting concept, if I do say so myself, that I really hope they do actually explore more heavily in future titles. Additionally, there's also a few more unknown badges that can be seen in the Electric Tale of Pikachu manga, and for good measure, there was also a badge known as the Diamond Badge that was handed out by Giovanni in the Pokemon Live musical. I personally love learning about weird stuff like this that exists outside of the main canon of the games because it makes me feel like there's more out there in the Pokemon world to discover past what we know. But what do you guys think about this? Let me know with a comment, leave the video a like if you enjoyed, as it really helps out a lot, and subscribe if you haven't already for more. You can also check me out on Patreon if you would like to further support the channel, which is extremely appreciated, and you can also get yourself some really cool perks and bonuses there as well for supporting. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it a ton, and until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.